Hello, folks. 7 o'clock Queensland, Australia, and you're listening to Radio FM 88 Australia. And for those people who've just jumped on through Facebook and YouTube, really great welcome. And for those people listening on the radio, look, if you want to continue, you're more than welcome. Or jump on the Facebook page, Radio FM 88 Australia, YouTube, Radio FM 88 Australia, and you can participate in the show, and you can make some comments, and the answers are coming through at the end of the day. All right, so without further ado, I hand you over to Andrena, who's my co-host.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. And if you're new to Dreaming the New Dream, or you're listening live or the replay, today is the 9th of February, 2023. Many of you will be aware of Sandi because she's a well-known researcher and many other things, but it's my great pleasure to have Sandi on the show today. And I've known Sandi for a number of years. I think you moved into Glastonbury and I moved to Australia, but you know, our paths have crossed over and over again. So I know you can touch on many subjects, and I'm very aware that we can only discuss some subjects. So really, I would just love you to share your journey. I know you were born in Kent, and you've been on a real spiritual journey. You're a real warrior, and I love your work and what you do. And you give people information, and they do you give them the research to do themselves to get their own information, which is very important because, you know, we say to everybody, have you done your research? You know. Anyway, on that note, without further ado, welcome, Sandi, and it's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks so much, Andrena and Jeff. It's really lovely to be here and to be talking to you guys. I think I've listened to your shows and I think they're lovely. I mean, you're doing such wonderful work, and thank you. Yeah.
So we start at the very beginning, you know, start your journey, your family, and all the different steps that have led you to where you are now.
It's funny, you know, because I was born in Dover in Kent, and I went to school in Folkestone, and my family were, you know, they were war. You know, my parents had me quite late. They'd gone through the war. You know, my father was a squadron leader in the Air Force, and my mother had been in the Air Force too. And I think, you know, they'd suffered during that time, particularly my father. And he drank quite a lot, but he was a very kind, lovely, loving father. But my mother had a rougher time, and she was, you know, she had a bit of, you know, quite a lot of depression because she was very awake. And it's only now that I realise how awake she was. She was actually quite psychic, and I think she suffered with that because she, you know, doctors had medicated her because she used to say she saw things, and of course that, you know, that's a no-no. And I always remember she'd had quite a rough childhood. She'd been in care in a Salvation Army children's home for a lot of her life because her parents couldn't cope. They came from an Irish Catholic background and loads of children, and then couldn't cope in very poor times, the poverty. So she was brought up in a Salvation Army children's home, where she was taught, you know, the scriptures, and of course she had latched on to the Book of Revelation. And when I was a child, I used to find it very freaky. She used to say, literally stare at me and say, "You will live through the Book of Revelation. You will." And I that scared me, and I left home quite quick. You know, when I was 18, I left home. I'd done my A-levels, and I decided to go to art school. But I always remembered what she said, and she used to say, "Nation will rise against nation, you know, kingdom against kingdom," and all of this. And it kind of, you know, that what I'm seeing now is almost what she was saying. Not that I'm particularly, you know, I'm not a Bible basher or anything, but there's certain things that are resonating right now of what she used to say. And I just think, well, maybe she did that for a reason. Maybe she, in her funny sort of way, she was waking me up as a child, because I've always been looking at the geopolitical stuff and what is going on, and are we going to live through this tumultuous time that will actually raise the consciousness of man, because that's what the Book of Revelation is all about. And sure enough, we appear to be living in very, very interesting times. And so as I grew up, I went to art school, and I studied set design for theatre, and I went and worked in theatre for a long time, which I absolutely loved. I worked at the Old Vic and the National Theatre in London on the South Bank, and really enjoyed it. But then I got married, and we bought a house, and money was always tight. So somehow I did go and do a bit of film and television. I worked in the music video industry, designing sets, and worked with lots of amazing musicians and stuff. But I then ended up in corporate live events, which was big business then. They called it industrial theatre, and it was kind of this selling products. It was all to do with corporations and big business. So there was so much more money in it than there was at that time in music videos, or that's when music videos had just started, and theatre. So I sort of migrated without really knowing what I was doing. It was all about the money and surviving at that time, because we'd had a recession, as we were always having these recessions and boom and bust situations. And I sort of got myself involved in working for big corporations, designing corporate live events. And I found myself suddenly working for all the people that I now realise are not doing us any favours, really. I mean, things like GlaxoSmithKline and Bloomberg. I worked for Microsoft. I met Bill Gates, and I worked for Google. I met Eric Schmidt. And I didn't get a good feeling from both of those people. I mean, I think in some ways we have a lot to thank these people for, because, we wouldn't be looking at ourselves right now if the things hadn't happened the way they had in the last 3 years. But it was an interesting sort of journey, really, because the GlaxoSmithKline one was a real wake-up call for me, because I was in a boardroom meeting, and they've got this big glass office in on the Westway going into West London. Massive glass office, huge, and it's almost like a mini city. They've got shops underneath, and they've got nurseries for the children, for the people that work there. They've got banks. They've got everything within this big glass building. And I had to go there for a meeting with the producer, and we were designing. We were working with them on a big sort of, it was quite a big live event, where it's interesting because what they do is they sell Ribena, which rots children's teeth. They also sell toothpaste with fluoride, which is their antidote to it. And they sell there are lots of pharmaceuticals which have had various effects on various people in different countries. And I was at this thing, and this meeting, and they were promoting a sort of a new drug, and I can't remember for the life of me what it was, but they said, we're going to penetrate the Ayurvedic market. And I thought that was awful language. We're going to penetrate in India. They're going to try and, capture the Indian market and penetrate, the Ayurvedic, the natural Ayurvedic, medicine that they have there. We're going to penetrate the Ayurvedic market. And I thought, hang on, Ayurvedic market's been going on for thousands of years, and what hubris to say they're going to do that. And I actually sort of walked out of the meeting. I got this terrible reaction, walked out of the meeting, and my producer came up afterwards, and she said, why did you leave? And I said, because I couldn't listen to that. It really had a visceral sort of reaction in my heart. And I said, I can't do this job. And she was really fed up, and she said, well, what did they say? And I said, well, they said they're going to penetrate the Ayurvedic market. And she said, what's that? And I thought, oh, I'm in the wrong job. I'm in the wrong job. So I stopped working for them. And then I started, I sort of got into, I was doing a job for Google, and they, Eric Schmidt is, he's okay, but he was just, it was all about money. Whenever they were talking, it was all about the money. And with Bill Gates, it was all about the AI, the artificial intelligence that they wanted to bring in, because I had to do a mini smart city in Chelsea, and all the tech was going in. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. But now when I reflect back, I realize what it's all about. All the jigsaw falls into place, and how we're just sort of on the brink, really, of this this seeing that all of this is actually moving to a place that perhaps we're not terribly comfortable with, with all the machine technology, the artificial intelligence technology that might be adverse to the human being. And this really is a spiritual sort of battle we're in to remain human, actually. Yeah.
Because it's like Big Brother is big data, isn't it?
Absolutely. And just recently I've been campaigning in the UK because there is this move to bring digital ID in by December in the UK, and I have put a lot of energy into trying to raise awareness about this, because there is an online consultation for people to fill in, but it is lip service. I think they'll try and do it anyway, but there has to be a pushback. And the fact is that the consultation is very heavily worded in their favor. It's quite a kind of trick questions. There's 12 questions, and so I've been trying to raise awareness about that, because you see, the thing is that Big Brother is here, but big data is a big problem, because they will sell on our data to third parties, and we don't know where that data is going, and they will use that data, to control us if they can. But people are waking up. There's almost like this tsunami of consciousness coming, and I really believe that I feel I straddle two worlds, because I'm doing my spiritual work, and I'm seeing that the hand, almost the divine hand, is almost behind people, and it's pushing us to understand what's going on and to do things differently, and kind of almost scupper their without a big revolution. We don't need that. We don't want that. We don't want to sort of go round in circles again. And sometimes, I think going out on the streets could turn nasty because of agents provocateurs or whatever. We have to do this very intelligently. And it's about setting up different parallel structures within our communities, so that whatever they're saying, oh, you've got to have this healthcare, you've got to have this education, you've got to have this, whatever, you actually say, well, actually, we'll do it this way. We'll set up our own education, our own natural, get away from the pharmaceuticals, because that is, I've been looking at a lot of Rudolf Steiner's work, and he predicted this. He said that the medicines will actually cut you off from your spirituality, and we know that with antidepressants and all those sort of, all those medicines that cut you off from your heart, from your third eye, your spirituality. It's about being able to sort of circumnavigate whatever they're doing, and if enough communities do this, then the parallel structures of society, from their way of wanting to do things, we set up something different. People will immediately think, well, I've got a choice here now. That looks awful. I'll go with this one.
Well, actually, Adolf Hitler made Rudolf Steiner public enemy #1.
Well, there you go. That's wow. That couldn't be more relevant right now, because his teachings, and I would advise anyone to go to his teachings and have a look, because he had a real thing about the pharmaceutical industry, and he did say that it will, the pharmaceuticals will literally they'll try and cut you off from your true nature. So and also he did talk about the bifurcation of society, which I think we're seeing people going for the money and people going for the for the soul. So this almost this split in humanity, where there's going to be people that are really moving away from the materialism, but in a good way. I mean, I don't mean sort of impoverishing themselves, but using money for using the energy of money for good rather than for massive profit and not good. So I think that's the that's the big takeaway from all this. And without you know, what's happened in the last 3 years, without the lockdowns, we would never have got to this. It's accelerated, if you like, it's accelerated our human consciousness and our will to understand what is, you know, what is important in our lives. And I think that's a big gift. And in some ways, in a sort of benign way, you have to thank Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and
Yeah.
you know, to them, because actually without their plan, you know, and it is a plan, it still is a plan to, you know, kind of control a lot of, you know, everything actually. You know, we can just move aside from that and develop ourselves, because it's woken people up so massively. I mean, I'm just amazed at what's happening in the UK at the moment, where there's all the truth is bubbling up to the surface, and it's so interesting. Yeah,
it's fabulous. It's fabulous. And I mean,
yeah,
you know, the period of where we were shut down and everything has good and bad effects. And for some, it taught them to go more into their heart and connect more with people, which is the positive side. But also now, through all what's happened, the after effects are suddenly rippling out, aren't they? You know, they threw that into the pond and everybody chose different ways. And now it's just rippling out. And it's like there is like a large undercover movement of awareness and waking up, and people are thinking, well, this can't be right. And you're hearing all sorts of different things. And you know, we're all in sort of different groups that are totally aware of what's going on and are here to support one another. And now if people got concerns, it's not making a judgment of, well, you know, I did this or you did that. That's nothing, you know, we all make choices. We're all here to support each other through those choices now more than ever.
Absolutely. And you know, there is this it's almost like a spirit of love, I find, within my own community at the moment, and a sort of I suppose it's a compassion, because it doesn't matter, you know, what you know, what your views are or whatever. It's looking at each other as human beings and in the spirit of love. And love is the only way we can conquer this. And love is what, you know, they, if you want to call them they, can't figure out. They can't get that whole love thing. And you know, we have to really look at ourselves, and no matter what's happened, you have to be kind first and right later. And that's how I feel at the moment with what's happening with this sort of this enormous, you know, kind of move towards the truth. You know, the real truth is bubbling up all the time. And I think we have to be aware that at no point can you be judgmental. You can't do that. You've got to regard everyone as your brother, sister, you know, father, whatever, or son, daughter, whatever. And the thing is that if we can do that, we're better able to help anyone with anything, and be in that spirit of neighborhood, community, love, whatever you want to call it, between each other, because that's the only way it will be one, is through love. Yeah.
Hey, I listened to you when you're in the Glaxon boardroom, and what came to mind there is the statement where the power of thought and how it travels, and we receive it as a picture. Yeah. So if I said to Sandi, hey, don't slam the door on your way out, I mean, everybody who's listening to the show is going to see you slamming the door. So the phraseology of them saying we want to penetrate, that seems to be the dagger that went into your heart as a word with a picture that said, shit. So when I listened to you and I thought, oh, I think you really euphoric stabbing there that you actually felt, and as a result, I've stepped back from it. So, and everybody else who gets caught up in the corporate world, and it's all about, we see it in different groups, and we see the alpha male, the alpha female, particularly when we're watching the bikies, you know, there's always the alpha male and the woman tries to be, I mean, what's the name? John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah.
When she turned up in the leathers at the very end to become, you know, the alpha woman. So we see that through a whole society. And I suppose when we look at that particular company and its corporatization, people want to get up in the pecking order and play this game of dropping on people to get under the top. But for what particular purpose and reason? And it seems to me like when I was listening to you saying, I'm out of here, it felt like your soul had said, no, I've been here before, I don't need to play this game. That's what it felt to me when I was listening to you.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we've all got past lives. Unfortunately, we're not given the gift of remembering them when we come into this incarnation. That'd be useful, but we don't. We have to sort of feel our way along and feel, you know, literally sort of, you know, take the cues from our intuition. And you know, sometimes you hear that call and you don't move on it. But then there's always a niggling, you know, thing, maybe throughout your whole life, you know, you didn't listen to the call. But if what I found I did at that point was I listened to the call, and that's when I decided I cannot work in this industry. I thought this is counter to everything that I'm feeling in my heart. So, and you're absolutely right. I think it was like a dagger through the heart, that conversation about penetrating the Ayurvedic market. So I just literally had this, you know, a lot of my family, not my children were behind me completely, but my sort of outer family thought I'd gone mad because I decided to uproot my entire life and give up the corporate world and come and live in Glastonbury, and they thought I'd run away with fairies or gone mad or whatever. And it was the best thing I ever did. You know, it really was. And of course, I'd given up the corporate world, and I impoverished myself. I bought a house, not derelict, but a house that needed doing up at auction. And I, I split up with my ex, who, you know, is quite, you know, he's still in the corporate world, and he's very much in that mindset, and the two couldn't, you know, we just couldn't understand each other. We didn't speak the same language, and so I ended up, you know, sort of being here and really delving into, you know, spirituality. And it's funny, Glastonbury, because it's also full of a lot of nonsense as well. So
Really?
I've spent 15 years now deciding what's what. But it was interesting because it's been a really lovely journey, and realizing that, you know, there is that this is, you know, in a way our world is a bit of an illusion, particularly that, you know, the material stuff is a bit of an illusion, and that, you know, there's another thing going on, and it's our spirit. And how, you know, I took, because I had no money, some friends of mine had taken over a pub, a sort of a failing pub, a music venue, because they were musicians. And they said, you know, do you want to come in on it? Do you want to, you know, because I had no income and I'd got a bit of capital. So I bought into this community pub, and it's called King Arthur. And it was almost like a metaphor, really, the whole Arthurian thing. It's very bizarre. But and I worked there for a long time, and I made the top half of it into a hub for sovereignty. You know, I was working with the Magna Carta and sovereignty and all that kind of stuff. And that has exploded into a massive thing all over Australia, New Zealand, all the Commonwealth countries. You know, with something called practical lawful dissent. You know, how you can lawfully challenge things under Magna Carta. All that was happening, and I was thinking, and it happened without me even trying. I just helped somebody. I said, "Oh, can we have meetings here?" and blah blah blah, and it's all kind of it all kicked off. And then I started doing talks on, you know, what's happening in the world, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And I've always felt that Glastonbury has supported and protected me in anything I've done. You know, it is an extraordinary place, and it can kick you out. It can give you, you know, the Glastonbury experience, Andrena. Have you heard?
Yeah.
Where, you know, you can come into Glastonbury full of, you know, like a Labrador puppy and think, oh, I'll try this spirituality, I'll try this modality, I'll try this, that, and the other, and you know, I'll try witchcraft, or I'll try Buddhism, or I'll try whatever, you know, and sometimes you get a really bad experience that can make you feel that you don't belong and you've got to get out, you know, so badly. And you know, I had a few of those experiences thinking, I'm not sure I should be here, but actually if you stick at it, it actually pulls you back in and says, right, you've learned that lesson, you can carry on now. So it's a really strange place.
Yes, I can vote for that after living there as well, and dipping in and out.
Yeah, you've been dipping in and out for years, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but I'm like, now talking to you, I'm already feeling the pull. I need to go up to Glastonbury again. So
yeah.
So anyway, and I've got a friend, Kathy, this over from Australia. She's coming to stay for the weekend, and I don't think we can cram it in this weekend, but I know, and Penny that's over from New Zealand and Oz, she wants to go up to Glastonbury, so I'm going to see how I can weave it in. But anyway, that's another story. But yeah, you know, Glastonbury, like, you know, like has got the magic and the mystery of it all, and just so much amazing experiences of being there. And I know I worked in the Chalice well as a volunteer, and you know, you just meet so many amazing people, and people that are dressed however they want to dress, and nobody goes, oh my God, look at you. No, it's just taken it's the norm, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if Glastonbury's taught me anything, it's tolerance and compassion. And you know, you walk down the high street and there's somebody dressed as a wizard or a fairy or you know, or Gandalf. You know, you see people with staffs with crystals on the top. And but the thing about Glastonbury also is that it attracts, you know, it's always been a place of pilgrimage, always. You know, from the moment that Joseph of Arimathea arrived and put that holy thorn, that staff, into Wiriel Hill, and was met by the Druid Aravagus, I think his name was. I can never pronounce his name, and was told that this is where the spirituality lies. You have to build he built the roundhouse, the original old, what they called the old church, but you know, the Druids were very big here, and they were the basis of Christianity that came after. So it is a place where people come when they're, you know, maybe when they're troubled. So you get a lot of problems here, like people with PTSD, people with alcohol problems. And you know, I was right in the thick of it. I was running a pub, you know, and trying to do it in a spiritual way, you know, trying to get the alcoholics to drink kombucha, which I managed to do a lot of the time, and get them off the alcohol. I mean, it was mad. And you have to look at these people and realize that that's their journey, and they're looking for something. They may not have found it, but don't you know, a lot of people say, oh, we've got, you know, drunks and drug addicts in Glastonbury. Well, yes, because they're trying hard. They've been drawn here, and you have to have compassion with them, because it's not, you know, it may look as though they're down and outs or whatever, but they're trying to find their way. And some of them are sensitives who literally cannot figure this world out, and they've dropped out. And you know, you have to, and I didn't understand that when I first came. I didn't have that sort of sense of compassion and love for people. I'd come from that corporate world, and and it's a transformation of the way that you see people and you see their journey, you know. Oh, there's oh, there it is.
Yes. Been down there a long time ago.
It was, I mean, I got out in 2020. I had it for 10 years, and it was like a second home, really. And but I did 5 months of lockdown, and I could see what was coming, and I thought, no, I can't do this anymore. And I was doing my Agenda 21 work all the time whilst I was there. And it was a home. It was a place where you could put on talks, you know, before obviously way before the lockdown. And it was like sowing seeds so that people understood what our world was really about, and that, you know, there is this whole corporatization, and it's all about money, and that in fact, you know, what we need to do is come down to a more local level, and understand. Gosh, all those pictures are so amazing. Yeah, and the King Arthur was it was almost like a baptism of fire. It's like, you know, rising from the ashes, and it was just unbelievable, really, because it was quite a dense place to hold, you know, because you have all sorts coming in, particularly at festival time, you know, when the Glastonbury festival's on. You used to get lots of mental health problems, people coming in completely, you know, they'd been drawn to Glastonbury, they'd gone to the festival thinking that was, you know, amazing, but then they'd found the town, and you know, some people literally go to the festival and never go home. They stay here, you know. So it's a place where there's a lot. It is the heart chakra of the world, and there is a lot. You know, there's a lot of love here, actually, and it doesn't matter what you believe in, or what your, you know, what your politics are. There's an understanding amongst most of the people, and, you know, myself included, that, you know, it doesn't matter. We're all here, and we've got to, you know, be like brothers and sisters, really. And it's taken me a long time to understand that, to be honest. It's taken me, you know, all that time at the Arthur, I was just beginning to see it, you know, beginning to understand the human condition, that we're human. We sometimes we fall by the wayside and drink and take drugs, but if you can help anybody, and I was always putting up homeless people overnight because they hadn't got anywhere to stay, and it was a really funny place. But I did 5 months of lockdown and thought, do you know what? I think I might go bankrupt if this carries on. And I got out. I mean, again, that was a weird synchronicity, because some people in the middle of lockdown, and I wasn't even advertising the lease for sale. In the middle of lockdown, someone came to me and said, would you like to sell it? And I said, yeah, okay. And it was the right time. It was completely the right time to sell. And so I sold the lease, and I got onto, you know, doing a lot of other work that I wouldn't have been able to do if I was worrying about going bankrupt, and dealing with all the stuff that you had to deal with in a business in lockdown. So it kind of worked for me. It was like, yeah, okay. Thank you, universe. I'll accept that offer. But it was because nobody was buying any businesses during lockdown, and these people just came to me and said, "Do you want to sell it?" And it was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is a gift." Thank you, universe.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
amazing.
And you know, I wouldn't at the moment. I wouldn't want to be running a business, you know, because it's so difficult right now. Everything's going up. You know, the seller, you know, when you have a bar, the seller is massive amounts of energy, and how they're managing now, I don't know. I just, you know, I have no idea. I mean, you know, we all have problems enough with our utility bills, let alone a massive.
Anything.
You know, yeah. So it's all interesting, the way things kind of unfolded, really. Yeah.
And like you say, it was divine timing and perfect timing for you to move on to do the next step of your journey, eh?
And the next step of the journey is doing what I'm doing now, which is, just raising awareness about what's happening, but still keeping, you know, not going into fear, because that's the one thing we mustn't do, is go into fear. We've got to be in the place of love, and be able to move on with understanding, yes, this is happening, but we don't have to engage with it. We can observe it. And my mission is to get people to observe and to understand what's going on, but don't engage with it. Just do something else. Do the opposite. You know, do whatever you need to do to actually just it's almost like mirroring it, but in a positive way. And that's what we've kind of been doing with everything that we've been doing to sort of raise awareness about this is really, as I say, setting up a different paradigm, a new world that we want, not what they want. Because their world is not a world I want to live in. Or my grandchildren, I've got 2 little grandchildren, and I'm only doing this really because of my kids and my grandchildren, because, well, and the rest of humanity, but I can't see a good future for them if this continues the way it is. And it is falling apart. I mean, they are panicking. It's all falling apart. And that new wonderful world is emerging, and we have to remember that and keep that in our hearts and our visions and everything, because that is the most important thing really right now at this time.
So, before you started the show, yesterday you sent through 4 screenshots of you doing awareness talks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to? You want me to bring them up and put them on the?
Yeah, do. Yeah.
Which one you want to do, mate? The Awakening Conference.
Well, I tell you what, the Freedom Network, is there one for Freedom Network? That's a very good organisation. They are, setting up again parallel systems. I don't know did I send the Freedom Network one? Maybe not. Maybe I didn't. Oh yeah, the Freedom Alliance. Because the whole thing is to set up those parallel systems, and a lot of what they do is they've got alternative schools, alternative healthcare, but with practitioners that are with medical doctors who've just thought, I don't want to be in the medical system the way it is at the moment, because it's breaking down, because it's supposed to break down, because they want to replace it with something else. So we've got to really be mindful about setting up these different systems, so that we have our own we create our own new world. And all of this, if anybody wants to engage with my talks, do look at them. The links are on I don't know, Rumble and Odyssey and YouTube, and I haven't got much on YouTube at the moment, but yeah.
So are you all on because I haven't really gone into Rumble, but that seems to be the newer platform for people.
Rumble at the moment, because things change, because it was that that YouTube would accept a lot of stuff, but now it's not the case. But there's various, certainly Rumble seemed to not censor quite so much. So yeah, Rumble.
Yeah, you can say a bit more on there, eh?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, they do take a lot down on YouTube now, but that's their choice, and there's always another. There's always creatives. This is what I think is rather annoying. The powers that think they're in charge. That was an Ike one. That was Deep Dive with he's a great bloke, Richard Willett, and and in that one I sort of go into the facts, the absolutely concrete facts of Agenda 21, because I've got all the documents that go back to 1992 when it was born at the Earth Summit, and how in a way some of that is all coming out. The 15-minute cities ideology is all in these documents that I put out all those years ago.
Yeah, and if people obviously, like some of the subjects are a bit sensitive, they can click on your links and they can listen to you sharing and explaining more about these things.
Should they want? Exactly. I mean, some people aren't ready for this. It's very difficult. Then some people aren't ready, and that's fine. Everybody comes to their awareness at different times, and there's some people that will be watching who want to look at this, and there's some people that say, oh no, it's not for me, and that's fair enough. That's something I did for UK Column in 3 parts. It was the Agenda 2021 2030, and how it was born, how it's been implemented.
For a lot of people that have no idea about any of this, can you do like a little snapshot or an idea of what it's about way?
Well, Agenda 21 was birthed at the Earth Summit in 1992, And interestingly, it was actually organised by oil billionaires and billionaires in general. And it was there's a guy called Maurice Strong, who's the grandfather of Agenda 21, and he had a lot of his experience. He loved China, and he'd lived in China for many years, and he liked, you know, the way that they did things. And so anyway, they decided amongst themselves, these billionaires and globalists, to hold this Earth Summit and to put forward, you know, that you know, it was all about anthropogenic global warming, actually. And it was all, you know, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you're not going to be saving the planet, so you have to do X, Y, and Z. And so it was all based on, you know, and they published massive books. I mean, I've got one here. It's about this thick. After the Earth Summit, on how they would control all, you know, all the resources. And that's what it's all about, is controlling the resources. Because as we know, you know, there's no money. The billionaires want to control the resources, and it's about controlling all the resources on the planet. So they published this global diversity assessment, which is what, you know, I talk about in the UK column things. And it, you know, all in there, all the keys, they've got this, you know, the zones where people aren't allowed to go. You've got the cities where people aren't allowed to get out. And this is all being mirrored in the 15-minute cities. So it's a soft smart city agenda that they're trying to enforce, which will get to be a hard smart city agenda. So the whole of the smart cities was embedded in the global diversity assessment, which came out of the Agenda 21 conference, which was called the Earth Summit in 1992. And it was all about saving the planet. But these globalists aren't saving the planet. They're destroying the rainforests. They're destroying everything. This is a nonsense, and we know it. And so what we've got to do is just look at the bigger picture and understand what's happening to us, and that this is, you know, the Earth Summit then went on, and you know, it became well, first of all, it was called they had the Millennium Development Goals that were to be you know, executed by the year 2000. That failed. Those Millennium Development Goals failed. There were 7 of them. And then they rebranded it in 2015 to Agenda 2030 with the sanction of the Vatican. The Pope got involved and said, "Oh yes, I'm going to endorse Agenda 2030 to bring in 17 goals of Agenda 21." And if you look at all those 17 goals, they're called the SDGs. They're the Sustainable Development Goals, and that's what this whole agenda, you know, things like the 15-minute cities, is based on. It's based on getting rid of all the cars, getting rid of all the planes, you know, keeping you in smart city zones, all that kind of thing. And you know, that is Agenda 21. It's to give the power more to the establishment. And to take away your sovereignty of freedom of movement, freedom of thought, freedom of speech, everything. So that's kind of what we're facing at the moment. So Agenda 21, that's it really. It's turned into the 4th Industrial Revolution. It's turned into the Great Reset, the financial system, you know, the digital IDs, the CBDCs, you know, the central banking digital system. Which, if we can move away from that and use, you know, decentralized money, that's better, because that's sovereign, and it's about keeping our sovereignty at the end of the day. It's about having sovereignty and having sovereign choices, but doing it in an intelligent way that doesn't harm the planet, that doesn't harm people's freedom. That's really what we've got to do.
Hey, nothing's really changed, you know, in England, eh? You do realise that. I mean, if we look back to the Lord of the Manor, you know, and you had the serfs and all that stuff, and then they put on a joust so all the knights would come and get the fair maiden, you know, win the maiden of the day, you know, and they had a suit of armour. But today, you know, the Lord of the Manor is the chairman of the board of the local football club. You know, and the uniform's not suit of armour, it's cloth. And your serfs are all the people who turn up to your football games, you know, and then they go to another pageant next weekend on a away game, you know. So nothing's really changed in the whole true sense. It's almost like we're in a play that keeps evolving. This has got a different title.
Well, the thing is, it's now what the UK has. Well, I'll call it not the UK. I'll call it the Crown Corporation. I'll be honest about it. The Crown Corporation has really really led the way. I mean, the Crown Corporation owns a lot of, well, most of America. I think all of America, to be honest. And this is now a global thing. So what the serfdom, the fiefdom, has gone global, and that's the problem. Is that ideology and that control, which has always been there. I mean, it wasn't the square mile of London is the most powerful financial institution or whatever it is in the world, and it controls a lot of the world, and this is being seen now. So that kind of serfdom, fiefdom, whatever you want to call it, is being now forced onto the rest of the world, particularly in the Commonwealth countries. So I think it is about understanding this global power, this whole thing, and moving away from it and doing the best we can to just do things differently.
Hey, I was in London for the bombings, and we're just going to get on the double-decker bus to do the second 24 hours around London, but all of a sudden they stopped the buses, and so we checked out of the hotel at the Strand and proceeded to go through the city because you couldn't get a bus or we couldn't get a train, couldn't get nothing. You had to walk. My mobile phone kept dropping in and out, so I ended up in an O2 shop. I spent an hour and 40 minutes having a conversation with the chairman of the London Chamber of Commerce, who explained to me the whole history of the 1 square mile with Nathan Rothschilds and how they cleaned up and how they are factoring and all the other systems that takes place with the City of London. So, it's what you're referring to about the fiefdom of the planet really started off with young Nathan Rothschild cleaning up at the Battle of Waterloo. Sandy's, there she is. She's just dropped off. Anyway,
say no more.
Yeah. So, listening to Sandy, you get the impression that being in the corporate world in London, dealing with set designer, she's worked there, theatre, corporate events, working for these individuals, and then realizing that she obviously had been given the business plan or prospectus of how these global corporate organizations wanted to play monopoly and treat every country as part of their whole business strategy. And someone is going to be looking after construction, someone's going to be looking after oil and gas, and someone's going to be looking after the monetary markets, and someone's going to be looking after logistics. I mean, someone's going to be looking at food production. I mean, that's just how businesses operate, and then you've got to work out who's got the cheap labour costs in it. So we've seen that in the Middle East and with Qatar, where they're getting all the people from the Indian subcontinent to come in and build all them stadiums,
Yeah. But I mean, she's given many talks. She travels all over the country giving talks. She's a real trooper, and I really honour the work that she does and what she's doing for humanity. Plus, she's a good friend, and we have, we meet up at birthdays, and when we pop in, I ring her, "Are you in? Shall we meet for coffee?" And so, yes. Any sign of her coming back on?
No, it's been smart cities must have taken her out.
Of course, I can't check on my phone because I'm linked to the mobile data.
No, she's back.
Right, okay. So,
sorry,
yeah.
What happened there? It just went. Yeah. Anyway, I think maybe the cable was a bit strange. Anyway, you were saying about the buses and you in London at 7/7.
Yeah, I was just referring to sometimes, a certain situation occurred when my mobile phone O2 dropped out constantly, and I ended up in an O2 shop. And of all the different people on the planet, I ended up having a conversation for an hour and 40 minutes with the chairman of the London Chamber of Commerce. And he was supposed to go over to Premier Blair as security detail, but they got told to stay where they were. So, I mean, I was just thinking how many secretaries or things I would have had to go through just to have this conversation with the guy. And it just opened a whole plethora of how the City of London operates. Obviously there's two mayors of London. The one who looks after the city has got ambassador's role. Those top 25 banks can lend out $1.40 times. It's quite an interesting game how they play with the money, and how you can give $1 to them and they can then say to you, well, I'm only going to give 5% interest to the people who come and borrow that money, but I'll give you 3%, so I'm only making 2%. But in reality, they're actually lending that out 40 times. So the first time they're only making 2%. The next 39 times they're making 5%. So, I mean, it's a real numbers game. It's a real racket in terms of
it is indeed
finance. And they've accumulated wealth based on zeros and ones, which is basically now a digital format, isn't it? So
yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And the thing is, there are these events that have happened that have really, compounded. I don't know whether it's woken people up. I'm pretty sure it has, but you imagine 9/11, 7/7, and anything that's happened after that. We've had there's been these events that would suddenly changed our world. I mean, I certainly remember 9/11. Nothing was ever the same again after 9/11. It just literally became a different world of security. And having to go through an airport after 7/7 was a nightmare. Traveling became different. Everything became different after 9/11, and everything became different after the pandemic. 7/7 was a big wake up call. I mean, I remember I was actually working in London 7/7, and it was scary. People just pouring out of the tubes and not being able to get on a bus or a tube, and people just panicking, not knowing what the hell had happened. It was frightening, and you realise that all of this is was for a reason. Yeah,
totally.
Oh, it's okay for an Aussie, wheeling his luggage through the city.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is what it is. So we got to Victoria Coach Station.
Yeah.
And then they had a bomb scare there. So then the next second at 5 o'clock, they put the buses back on the tubes, and then my mates could get to Paddington Station. Mate, there's trains running out of Bristol. Yeah. But been in the heart and soul of it. But but if we talk about the dukes and the earls and all those guys running their little fiefdoms, and then we've got the chairman of the board and the CEO and the trainer running the football club. They're doing it another way now. But you mentioned before about the price of utilities and the price of fuel. You're now restricted financially about how far you can go and where you're going to spend your budget. Yeah. And then on top of that, you get migrants who come in and they've been put into hotel rooms where the government of the day is forking out multi-millions of dollars, when people have been working in the UK and are pensioners, they don't receive those benefits that someone new who's just turned up is receiving. Unbelievable wealth. It just sets the whole different train in motion, isn't it?
It does. And you have to ask, without getting into a sort of racist debate, because sometimes you're accused of being racist when you say, well, why are these people arriving on our shores and what's happening to you? And in a way, what they've done is they've displaced these people, and it's all part of the grand plan, is to displace them from their country of origin, and make it so that they're not a lot of them aren't refugees, they're economic migrants, but they're being treated as refugees. And the thing is that then they're almost it's made impossible for them to live in their own country because of war or whatever. It's been orchestrated again. And so they arrive here and they're encouraged to come here as the land of milk and honey. You know, this is where you can be looked after. This is where, and it, you know, why there's a, you know, that why are they being put into these hotels? And the majority of them are young men. And that's a bit of a worry. You know, there's a lot of that going on. You know, I know a hotel owner, funnily enough, in Cornwall, and he's got this 5-star hotel in Cornwall. And he got a call from the Home Office, and they said, you know, we want to give you X amount of million to have your hotel for a year or maybe 2 years, but a yearly contract to have migrants put in there. And he said he had to think. He thought, actually, I could have a year in the Maldives with the wife or whatever, or Barbados. But he's a man of principle, and he said, actually, my business supports the local community. It's only a small town in Cornwall. My business supports a whole community here. I can't, and because they were saying, sack all your staff. We'll bring our own people in to do the cleaning once a week and get the food in, and you don't have to worry about anything. You know. And he said, well, what about damage? Because it's a beautiful 5-star hotel. And they said, oh, take photographs and we'll reimburse you for any damage that may be caused. But he had the moral fibre to say, actually, no, I don't want this. This is not going to be good for my community. Because he's a very wealthy man in his own right. He could have, you know, done it. But there's a lot of hotels, you know, all over England. I mean, I think I did get a list of them the other day. Somebody sent me a list of all the hotels that have been taken over. And it runs into sort of like, you know, 70, 80, 90 hotels. And you just think, if they're all full, you know, what is going on?
Definitely.
So, yeah, who knows? But I mean, I wouldn't like to, you know, sort of to predict what that's for. But it's odd, and the thing is that it is impoverishing. You know, we're all poor. We can't pay our bills. You know, all the, you know, the wages have been frozen. We've got strikes going on. And yet thousands and thousands are going to bringing these people in. Why? What you know, why would you do that? Why would you impoverish your own country to bring these people in who, I know it's sad, but you have to, you know, you have to think about, you know, your own, you know, your own first before you help others, you know, because that's, you know, how it's a bit like, you know, putting your, you know, your oxygen mask on before your children's ones. Do you know what I mean? It's like that whole thing. Yeah. You know, and be committed to obviously help these people, but you know, we can't. How can we just keep them here and impoverish our own people? I don't know. It's really difficult. It's a big conundrum, really, because you want to be compassionate, you want to help them, but on the other hand, what can you do? It seems that they're getting all the beneficial treatment that our own people aren't getting. Benefits are being cut. You know, people are really suffering, and yeah, not good.
No.
So when you see communities like Findhorn, for example, you see, I mean, that's been going since the 60s, but is there anything that's apart from that particularly community? Is there any others that you've noticed around in England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland in your travels?
I think there's communities sort of popping up everywhere. I mean, you know, I did the Freedom Network down in Battle in near Hastings, and they've got a great community there with, you know, farms that have got together. You know, and there's one farm where they've allocated part of it as a new school, Hope Farm, in Battle, and so that I think there's communities popping up all over the place, and I think really it'll kick in more when, I hate to say it, when things get worse, which I think they could do much. You know, I think people will consolidate more, get together more, because at the moment, not everybody really thinks that anything's too bad at the moment. But you know, I think this March, I just get this real deep feeling that March is going to be a big turnaround, because I think personally that there's the powers, this big power structure is, the people within it are panicking, and they're trying to accelerate it too quickly, and they're making mistakes. I think there's a massive amount of, because they're pushing too far, the people are going, hang on, there's something wrong with that. If they'd tried one thing, it probably would have worked. But to throw everything at us at once, which is kind of what they're doing right now, the 15-minute cities, the digital ID, the central banking digital system, everything is and the 5G, all these battles that everybody's like, it's sort of like whack-a-mole. You're trying to bat it all off. I think with that comes hang on a minute, this is a step too far. And I think people, as it progresses, people are just going to wake up more and more. Yeah.
Andrena and I once saw a show, we spoke about it beforehand, The Green Beautiful, wasn't it? It was a living example of where a society had come to that same crossroads and chose to throw away all their capitalism, corporate society, and get back into their true heartfelt essence of all their different gifts. It was quite interesting show, wasn't it?
It was. Have you seen that, Sandy?
No.
You'll have to put the link up again, Jeff.
Yeah, have to find it. The Green Beautiful. It's very hard to find. I think it's on Vimeo now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you look at someone, people like the Amish, they just don't engage with all this stuff, and it's actually benefited them. They live their lives, and all of this won't affect them because they've lived in a very simple way. They haven't had the technology. They don't engage with. I'm not saying we all should live like the Amish at all, but their principles have protected them in a very interesting way. We've got. It's almost like we don't want to go back to living, in this agrarian sort of society where, everything's quite hard. You have to carry water, chop wood, blah, 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 blah. But for a period, we might have to. But the thing is that technology is there for the good. And it's about shifting the technology from being a form of control and manipulation and the destruction of the human condition to something else, because that technology can be used for good. When you look at Raymond Reif and Wilhelm Reich, all of these people, and Tesla, they all had a vision of creating a better world, not a worse world for us. And that's what, in a way that this whole thing with the globalists is that they're trying to play God, and they think they have this power, but they don't. And I think they'll fall foul of all of this because they're trying to really create their own world for themselves. You notice that when they go to Davos, they're all in their private jets. There's no worry about global warming or climate change or whatever you want to call it. They just literally are doing whatever they like. And if you looked at the menu, what they were eating, they're telling us to eat crickets and bugs and plant-based crickets. Yeah, they were eating venison and all their menu was extraordinary. It was all meat and stuff that they're saying that we are really not supposed to have because of climate change. But they seem to have a different set of rules, and that is being, that's a huge hypocrisy that people are understanding now. That there is this strange two-tier system, and it's just not right, and it won't work, because people will just start questioning and say, well, I'm not going to listen to you because you're a hypocrite. Yeah.
And it's definitely not listening to the news, is it? Because I mean,
no.
They feed you one story, and we know that's not the truth. Like most of us, or without being judgmental, but we know that they have to say what they have to say, but we know, hello, that's not really what's happening. And it's like food chains, and I've noticed in the supermarkets now all this vegan plant-based stuff. But when you look at what is in, you think, oh, that's you know, it's bound to be good for you. Is herbs, is all, you know, natural grown, etc., not touched. But when you look, a lot of these stuff have got fillers in, you know.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, they've got all sorts of stuff.
you
That's not
need to look at labels, you know, and they're, you know, they're doing things, different things, like in the toothpaste, in the water, in your food. You just have to wake up more and more and be aware. What are you eating? What are you looking at? What, you know, some of these processed foods, because I know every now and again, if I eat too much bread or something like that, my energy just goes down. I'm, you know, feel really tired, or you know, and it's just being aware of what you're eating, and then just sort of later on thinking, oh God, I felt tired, what have I had? And you look back and think, oh yeah, that's probably, you know, it's little things that are, people are being more aware of, eh?
Yeah, and nutrition is such a big part of this. It's like looking at the really the whole human being, and how we live, and how we what we eat, you know, how we organize ourselves in that respect. And you see, the thing is that the soil has been degraded, so there's not a lot of nutrients in the foods that we're buying in supermarkets, for instance. I mean, they're just tasteless, and they've been forced. All of that, in a way, it's you know, if you think about changing that whole paradigm, it all has to break down for us to rebuild it, you know. And you know, it's our way of building back better, because that's what they were saying, but actually they were building back worse. So we need to really get hold of this and use our land, because at the moment they're trying to, you know, I don't know if you know about, you know, the natural asset classes, is that the corporations are now buying up a lot of the land so that they can offset their carbon credits. You know, people like BA are buying massive. I mean, the whole offsetting of carbon credits to me is just absolutely ridiculous. It's like getting somebody else to pay your bills, and it's just ridiculous, because they can, you know, they're thinking that they'll be able to fly all over the world and offset it by buying up, you know, forests and planting more trees and what have you. But what they're doing is that they're changing the biodiversity of all that anyway, by chopping the trees down and planting new ones, and using the forests as a form of currency, because these natural asset classes will be traded on. I mean, it's a long process, but they will trade those natural asset classes on the blockchain. And it's all a nonsense, or none of it makes sense. Nothing makes sense. So really, we want to, you know, have the land for the people, not the corporations.
Of
and
course.
That's, yeah. And unfortunately, that's what they're trying to do, is just bring the corporations into the land to actually trade the non-fungible tokens on the blockchain from the benefits of that land. And actually, that land should be for the people, not the corporations. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on that, you know, we're just kind of aware of all these battles, but I think it'll happen organically. Something divine hand will always be there. And the fact that people's consciousness is raising about all of this, and within themselves, you know, their own consciousness is raising alongside it, because they, you know, it's almost like an alchemical process that happens in times of need. You have this, you know, this awakening alchemical process happens, where you suddenly become more aware, and more aware of yourself, as well as aware of what's going on in the world.
I remember watching the Celestine Prophecies, or reading the books as well, but that was a case of don't buy into fear, but raise your vibration on the principle of love, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely.
That is what we've got to do. You know, we can't go rioting on the streets, you know, because then, you know, you never know what these people in hotels are there for. You know,
Exactly.
This is kind of what they're waiting for. And we cannot go into that. We have to rise above that and just stand firm. It's like standing in the middle of a storm and not getting blown away. Just standing firm and knowing that we have the right to stand in our sovereignty, to create the new world, and to not buy into fear, because the fear is what they'll do. They'll be ramping up the whole, you know, Ukraine thing, and again, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's just to get us into fear and buy into possibly CBDC systems or whatever. They'll use anything to get us into fear, to get us on board with what they want to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. Anything else? Jeffrey, do you want to ask anything else before we close?
No, good.
Right. So is there any last words of advice or wisdom you'd like to share with our viewers before we finish?
Yeah, I think really it's what's the takeaway of all of this? I think it's like yourselves. It's understanding that this is a spiritual battle that we're in, as well as a physical. You know, we're in the physical. We can't help it. We're dense. You know, but there is this battle going on, and I think it's going on everywhere up in in other realms, and it's a battle that's been fought for eons and eons and eons. But this is like the final battle, because if we don't actually win this, it's the end of human beings. And human beings are literally, we've all got the spark of the divine in us, and we have to remember that that it's very important that the human condition remains, that we actually survive this, because this is what the other, whatever it is, that the opposers or whoever they are, whatever they are, really don't want us to have is our souls and our consciousness. And we have to really stand firm and really believe that we will win this battle, and win it fair and square. That their systems will crumble, because their systems are not from love, and our systems are, and love always conquers fear. So that's
definitely. Definitely. And we know things are breaking down faster and faster, and more is being uncovered and being revealed, and like people are coming together, and we're all sharing and networking and supporting each other. So the undercover movement is moving at a rapid pace.
Yeah. There's a silent army there, you know. There's a silent army of people that at any point, and I think we have got a few challenges to come, without a doubt. And it's knowing that, we're not through the worst of this yet. I think we've got a lot coming at us, and it's to still hold that in your heart, that we can actually overcome it. And I think it's not going to be easy. And it's going to require a lot of strength and determination and love to pull us through. Yeah,
but it's all part of the big divine plan, isn't it?
It is.
To raise us up.
It had to go. This system had to go. It had to go. And it's a bit like Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed. Sometimes I don't want to get too biblical, but do you know what I mean? Things have happened in the past where things have literally wiped off, and then you start again, and that I think has to happen to a degree. Otherwise, the humans have to remain, because we're part divine. We're creative and wonderful creatures, and the other choices aren't.
Definitely. Okay, well, another interesting show as ever. So thank you so much for being our guest this week.
Thanks for having me. It's been really good fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been lovely. And I'll give you a tinkle when I'm down in and see if you're about.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay. Thank you, Jeffrey. It's been really interesting, and gosh, it looks so lovely where you are with the sun and everything. We've had a bad winter.
Yeah, it's a bit cold here today.
It's about 30 today.
Oh,
all right, don't rub it in.
Don't rub it in, please.
Oh, okay.
It must be about, what, 9 here or 11?
Wow. Yeah, it's better than it was. It was -1 yesterday, or a couple of days ago. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Love your work. Thank you very much. Just stay on there while we
Bless you. Thanks a lot. And keep in touch. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.